What is the difference between riding the tube versus floating the needle? Floating the needle is essentially what it sounds like. You're going to be floating the needle outside of your cartridge more than what would allow you to go too deep into the skin and cause a blowout. So turning on our machine, we'll be able to see that our needle is floating out of that cartridge. We want that needle to be floating out of the cartridge, and the reason being is because if you do ride the tube, there are a couple cons with this. Yes, it will allow you to not go too deep into the skin, but it will damage the skin barrier as you're riding along the skin. So we have two lines here, and it'll kind of show you what it looks like to ride the tube or float the needle. First, if you are floating your needle out, you will be about that 2 millimeter to 2.5, only trying to go into that skin around 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters at absolute deepest. I normally start around that 1.5, and I do float my needle out more of that 3 to 4 millimeter range. You don't want to float it out too much more than that, because if you do, it will either not be able to pick up enough ink onto the skin and get it in there and get a nice saturated line, or you could have some speckling on the skin. There are a couple different cons with that. So keeping it under that 4 millimeters, but a little bit further than 2, and learning your skin depths is going to be one of the most important things when you are learning how to tattoo. I do encourage you that when you are starting to tattoo, to ride the tube just to get a good feel of what it is to have that 2 millimeters in depth. If you are going on a thinner part of the skin, you are going to want to make sure that you're sticking more of that 1.5 range, because there is different skin depths and thicknesses all throughout the body. So let's start off with riding our tube, and we're pulling that needle back in, really just about that 1.52 range. The hard part about this is you can see that the ink starts to puddle up around it. It makes it hard to see where your needle is going, especially with more precise lines. You can see it's almost pulling that cartridge all along the skin. But again, seeing that ink spit all over the skin, that is a very common thing to happen when you are riding the tube. You can already see where there would be blowouts or skin damage right in this area particularly, and right in here as well. Now let's try pulling a line with floating our needle outwards, more of around that 3 to 4 millimeter range. So you could already tell from these two line examples that this guy is going to be much more saturated, has a consistent line thickness and weight throughout, versus our riding the tube, it gets a little bit more iffy here. You can see even when I do start to stretch that fake skin, it just completely chewed it apart. So that's where you're going to have issues with that, versus when we're riding our tube, we're at a really nice depth. We don't have any issues there.